Welcome to another episode of Mike's Money Picks. Today on the podcast, we are in the penultimate week of the regular season for the 2025 college football season. We are talking about week 13, and we are here to break down the Saturday main slate. We're going to tell you everything you can expect from the games on the DraftKings main slate for week 13, as well as who needs to be in or out of your DFS lineups, as well as any leans if you're looking to bet player props or sides and totals from this great slate of games. Now, a quick programming note. So this week, the schedule for recording, the schedule to release these episodes has been a little bit different. I've mentioned it here on the podcast before, but I've been coaching a high school girls flag football team, which is an absolute blast. I coached boys football for almost a decade, and then being able to go and coach girls has been just so much fun, breath of fresh air. But that season finally came to an end. We had a road playoff game Wednesday night, which involved a very long road trip, and so I was not able to record Wednesday night. We did end up losing in the round of 16 for the state playoffs, which is, that's not a bad season by any means. But that season's over, so the schedule is going to get a little bit more normalized for recording, but it made this week very difficult. Now, obviously, I'm also going to enter high school basketball season now as well, because I coach that also. So Friday night, I'm going to be coaching a high school basketball game. So I'm not going to be able to record anything for Friday night for any of the content for the rest of the week. What that has done is that has put a scheduling conflict on the live show for this week. So there is going to be no live show this week. We're going to look to be back with Zach, aka Big Country, next week to talk about one of these, either the Friday or the Saturday slates, because they're both going to be pretty good next week. But this week there will be no live show. So what I'm going to do, if you're used to more of the live show content, I'm going to kind of do a segment at the end of this one. So this might go a little bit longer. I'm going to do a segment at the end of this one where we kind of organize our thoughts like we do on the live show. Talk about Zach's cash game core 4, which we always do on the live show. And if you're somebody who always listens to this breakdown but has never checked out the live show, and you like what I'll do at the end of the episode here, well, then go check out the live show next week when we get back onto our regular schedule. But that does it for the introduction, y'all. We've got 12 games to break down. We've got a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. All right, so game number 1 on the slate is between Missouri and Oklahoma. The Sooners are 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 42.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 24-18 in favor of Oklahoma. And I got to say, y'all, I have less than zero interest in this game from a DFS perspective. I am very interested in betting the under on this game if it stays at 42.5. I just don't think there's going to be a whole lot of scoring in this one. I think Missouri is going to struggle to score at all against Oklahoma. I think that Oklahoma is running an offense that is not in a rush to score. They're playing very conservatively. They're not very good on the offensive line. They can't run the ball. So I don't think Oklahoma is going to get 42.5 on their own, and I don't think Missouri is going to help them in getting there. Missouri is in an interesting spot where Bo Prabula, the starting quarterback, is questionable for this game. But even then, he had a pretty gruesome injury, pretty bad injury. Even if he plays, is he going to be full strength? Is he going to be able to run? I don't think so. And Oklahoma, they showed us last week with Alabama that when they're able to go up against a one-dimensional offense, they can really pin their ears back and stop that one dimension pretty well. I just don't see anybody from this game giving us a DFS like GPP-worthy score. I just don't see it. Even Ahmad Hardy, the great running back from Missouri, I just don't see it at all. John Mateer, quarterback for Oklahoma, has not been the same ever since his hand injury. I'm entirely out on this game. Game number 2, Louisville heading to Dallas to take on SMU. SMU is 2.5-point favorites with a game total of 51.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 27-24 in favor of SMU. Now, what's interesting in this one is that Louisville going up against the SMU defense has been a massive pass funnel. What I mean by that is they're ranked 14th nationally in rushing yards allowed and 135th nationally in passing yards allowed. In case you're wondering, there's 136 teams in FBS football. SMU ranks 135th in passing yards allowed. Yes, they allow more passing yards than UMass. How is that possible? Anyway, the quarterback that's going to be going up against it, on paper, it's supposed to be Miller Moss, but now he's listed as questionable today. I don't know what to make of this. I think that there's a potential chance that quarterback split snaps in this game. But looking at Moss, y'all, I don't bat 1,000. I don't get everything right. But I was pretty much hitting the nail on the head with the regression train coming for Miller Moss. There were weeks where he had just consecutive weeks of rushing touchdowns, even though he's not a runner. And since that has dried up, the passing hasn't even been there either. He's been quite bad in his last 3 games. Now, this is a dream matchup going against SMU, but you need to know that he's playing before you play him. And I don't like the fact that he's questionable. I don't like the fact that there's rumors swirling out there that the quarterbacks could split snaps. Deuce Adams would be the guy I would expect to be the starter, but even then, I don't have enough confidence to play him. Now, there is a guy that I do like at running back for Louisville. And it's solely because of injuries. Isaac Brown is out. Kejuan Brown is out. Duke Watson is like the last guy left standing. Now, Duke Watson has not done anything yet this season. However, last season, if you remember him, Duke Watson was the spellback for Isaac Brown, came in and was just this efficiency monster, averaged about 6 yards a carry, broke off some explosive runs. Even though SMU is a really good rushing defense, Duke Watson at $5,000 with a full workhorse workload, that has my attention. I think he's going to be a guy that ends up in my player pool. At the wide receiver position, the good news is with Louisville is no matter who's throwing the ball, they're going to throw it at two guys. They're going to throw it to Chris Bell or they're going to throw it to Colin Lacey. Like that's pretty much like open and shut, like lock and key, like it's going to be those two guys. So this becomes a spot where you could potentially play a Louisville stack with something like Bell or Brown or Lacey or one of the two of them and end up, playing them without the quarterback. Bell has 98 targets on the season, which ranks third overall on the slate. Lacey is a little bit less in terms of total targets. He's at 70. He also has a lower ADOT. I generally think that Bell has a higher ceiling and floor than Lacey, but Lacey's given some good games as well. On the SMU side, y'all, what happened to the Kevin Jennings that I knew and loved? Last season, Kevin Jennings was like this dual threat electric quarterback for SMU that just kind of ran roughshod through the ACC. Now he's like barely running. He hasn't run for more than 20 yards in a game this season. He only has 2 rushing touchdowns on the season, one against FBS competition. But yet he's still turning in some decent DraftKings performances, back-to-back games over 25 DraftKings points. This team is unable to run the football. They're just not good at it. And so they're really putting a lot on Jennings' shoulders. And even though he's not running, he's not scrambling, which is kind of preventing him from having just a ton of upside like he had last year. He's still delivering some good performances. And so I'm certainly considering Kevin Jennings for this game, especially if I'm looking to build a game stack with some of those potential Louisville guys on the other side. As I just mentioned, SMU struggling to run the football. I have no interest in the committee of Harden and McFall, which sounds like a mediocre law firm in the Southeast. At the wide receiver position, I have a lot of interest in Jordan Hudson, not the Jordan Hudson that is Bill Belichick's girlfriend. This is the Jordan Hudson that is the SMU wide receiver. He's got back-to-back games of 24 DraftKings points or more, had 11 catches against Miami. And y'all, to me, when you look at like these teams and you look at what they do in similar game environments, you can get a read for what they're going to do in future game environments. They're like that, right? In a game against Miami with their season on the line, they look to Jordan Hudson early and often. He had 27.6 DraftKings points. This is another game. They're playing for the right to go to the ACC championship, potentially if the tiebreakers break the right way. They're going to be looking Jordan Hudson's way early and often. Yes, Brinson and Knight and Maryland are also a part of the passing offense, but this is Jordan Hudson's season, wide receiver 1. All right, game number 3 is Miami taking on Virginia Tech. I feel like we just mentioned Miami, ironically. Miami's 18.5-point favorites in this game. Game total is 48.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 33-15 in favor of the Hurricanes. So this game is not expected to be close, but I do think that there's multiple ways that you can attack this game from DFS purposes. Carson Beck, as frustrating as he is, as much as nobody likes Carson Beck, he's been pretty good the last 2 weeks. 21.7 DraftKings points against Syracuse, 23.8 against NC State. He's priced at $6,900 on this DraftKings slate. That's not an unreasonable price tag for a guy that's doing what he's doing. I think this game actually has like sneaky shootout potential. So I don't mind Carson Beck at $6,900, especially considering he has a super clear stacking partner that we're going to talk about in a second. At the running back position, this is kind of a mess. Mark Fletcher Jr. is supposed to be back for this game. The question is what is that going to make this carry share look like? Because last week you had Gerard Pringle functioning as the workhorse, 17 carries for 116 yards. He was great. But yet you also had Shamar Brown lingering around for 8 carries. You had Jordan Lyle, who actually didn't have a carry. I just now noticed that. So yeah, you're entering full-blown committee status here. Virginia Tech does rank 99th in rushing yards allowed, so it's a good matchup. But I just have no interest trying to invest in a committee and trying to pick the right back, especially when Fletcher, like, he's up there at $7,000. So you're needing like 21 plus DraftKings points from him to feel comfortable, to cash in a GPP. And how's he going to get that if he's splitting carries? I just don't like it. Now, at the wide receiver position, this is what I do like. Malachi Toney. We were all over him last week. He ended up coming in a bit chalky, which is fine. Like we're going to talk about later how chalk isn't always a bad thing in college football DFS. But 24.5 DraftKings points against NC State. Only needed 5 catches to get there. I think he's another solid play here against Virginia Tech. He's the wide receiver 1. He's getting targeted most. He's the guy you want. CJ Daniels last week was rescued by a touchdown. He is going to be active again this week. And what it did when Daniels was back active was it kind of reduced the role of Josiah Trader again. He only had 1 catch. So really, to me, I think Daniels is a little overpriced. I think it's Malachi Toney or bust. And I definitely am going to have a little bit of interest in a Beck and Toney stack. Now, one reason why I'm going to have interest in that stack is because, like, I'm super interested on this other side with Virginia Tech. Not at the running back room because Miami's a really good run defense, and they're probably going to be splitting carries between Hawkins and Stewart. Not in the wide receiver room because Virginia Tech ranks outside the top 100 in overall pass rate. Aiden Green has had 1 game over 12 DraftKings points this season. Takai Heath, the slot, has had 1 game over 12 DraftKings points this season. I'm interested in the quarterback position for Virginia Tech because Kyron Drones is here. He's 4,800. Y'all, that is an insane price tag for Kyron Drones. Utterly insane. Each of the last 4 weeks, he's been over 20 DraftKings points. That is 4x value. He averages 24 DraftKings points per game on the season. That is almost 5x value for this salary. If you want 3x value from him, all you would need, with him not even attempting a forward pass, would be 70 rushing yards and a touchdown, which he's done each of the last 4 games. I know Miami is a good defense. Miami has a really good pass rush with Bain and Mesidor. This is not a great matchup for Virginia Tech, but you're getting one of the most athletic quarterbacks in college football with one of the highest rushing upsides in all of college football at a salary of $4,800. Sign me up. Like, just sign me up. Like, this is just a ridiculous price tag. It's ridiculous. And what that price tag is going to do is it's going to allow you to get creative with the rest of your lineup. It's going to be like you're playing a 1 quarterback lineup, but you're really playing 2 quarterbacks. So you're going to be able to spend up at the other positions. You're going to be able to get to different combinations. You're going to be able to pay for that high-priced quarterback that you might not have been super interested in. And so I'm just super interested in Drones at $4,800. He's going to be a big part of my lineups this week. Yes, I know the matchup's bad, but that price tag for that guy with that rushing profile, I can't ignore it. Next up, we've got Rutgers taking on Ohio State. Ohio State is 32.5-point favorites, which is just kind of par for the course for them at this point in the season. Game total of 55.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 44-12 in favor of Rutgers. Y'all, you're not playing anybody on Rutgers. You're not doing it. And if you are doing it, you're psychotic. Ethan Kaliak-Manis, the Greek rifle, having a good season, bud. Not playing you against Ohio State. Antoine Raymond, workhorse running back. You're getting fed. Having a nice season, bud. Not doing it against Ohio State. 2 receivers, KJ Duff and Ian Strong. They've been great. Not doing it against Ohio State. Have we had anybody this season deliver a good DraftKings performance against Ohio State? Maybe the argument is Parker Livingstone in week 1 for Texas, and that was like 13 DraftKings points, and he was like 3,500. That's not the case with these guys. Now, on the Ohio State side, I'm not really all that interested in Julian Sayin. This team, like, they're on such cruise control at this point that they don't need Sayin to do a whole lot. They just don't. And what's worse for Sayin is the health of his wide receivers. We don't know what the deal is with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. Their status has been super murky. Ohio State has shown no interest in revealing it. And if they don't have those 2 receivers, who's to say that they're not just going to run the football all day long? Now, I do think that if they're without those 2 receivers, that certainly opens up some looks to Brandon Ennis as well as Mylan Graham, both of whom had 7 targets last week. I think that there's a little bit of interest in them for GPPs, maybe even with Bryson Rogers, who was on the field a ton last week as well. Maybe a little bit of interest in them because you could hope to just get 1 touchdown. And then, like, when this game is out of hand and it's in garbage time, they're the backups anyway. So they're probably going to see extended run into garbage time. I mean, maybe they could be worth a look, but I'm not really here for the Ohio State passing game, even though Rutgers is a really bad defense. What I am here for is the Ohio State run game if C.J. Donaldson is out. When C.J. Donaldson is active, he is the most annoying vulture of a running back that I have seen in recent college football memory. He gets all the goal line touches when he's active, which limits the upside of all the other guys. Bo Jackson last week Surprise, surprise, CJ Donaldson was out and he scores his first rushing touchdown in 6 weeks, hits 20 DraftKings points for the first time all season. He is good. Like, Bo Jackson is good at football. I know, shocker, right? Like, that sentence wouldn't have surprised anybody if you popped him into a time machine and put him in 1985 as opposed to 2025. Bo Jackson is good. It's how much this team wants to use him. And if Donaldson is out, he's not going to get vultured at the goal line. He's going to have opportunities to get there. Peoples and West are going to see opportunities as well. I don't think I can get there on them in my lineups, but I do like Jackson at 6,600. All right, that does it for the first 4 games. We're going to take a quick breather and then get on with the rest of the slate. Now, before we continue, I do want to mention there are places where you can get more information from me. First off, you can follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. It's where I tweet out all updates for the show, as well as if you ever have any lineup questions, feel free to reach out to me and ask me on Twitter. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I'm also in the Fantasy Corner Discord. Link is in the description on YouTube as well as on the audio feed. Fantasy Corner Discord is a community of a bunch of really good, really smart people who play DFS for all kinds of different sports, college football included. We're always in there talking strategy, talking lineups, talking plays. And then once the game starts, sweating it out together. It's an absolute blast. It's a great community to be part of. I cannot recommend it enough, and it's 100% free. Then, if you want to know who actually makes my college football DFS lineups, head on over to the Patreon, patreon.com/Mike's Money Picks. I post for every single college football DFS slate my core plays, as well as a full write-up why they are my core plays. So you're not just getting a list, but you're getting information and good reasoning from somebody who knows what they're talking about with this stuff. I am not going to sit here and guarantee that you're just going to print money by playing those core plays. It's not how it works. Anybody who promises that is lying to you. What I can promise you is that you can get a lot of information and a lot of strategy that can help you improve your game. All right, let's take a look now at Baylor in Arizona. This is a fun one. Arizona, 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 62.5, meaning the implied total is about 34-28 in favor of the Wildcats. So you have like a tale of two defenses here, right? So the Arizona defense ranks really good statistically in passing yards allowed. They're ranked 10th nationally in passing yards allowed. They did a really good job of limiting Brendan Sorsby last week as well. But they have not played a quarterback like Sawyer Robertson yet. Sawyer Robertson is basically a guy that you just pencil him in for 300 yards. And his DFS day is going to be determined by how many touchdowns he scores, how many interceptions he throws. He's a pretty solid play, in my opinion, $8,000, even though this is not an optimal matchup, just because he's going to throw the ball so many times. Like, this team's run game is like non-existent right now because Bryson Washington has been just so banged up. He like never finishes games anymore. But Bryson Washington is at $5,700. Now, let me make a compelling case here for Bryson Washington. So, like, we talked about Desmond Reed last week. Desmond Reed ended up being a big-time part of my portfolio, but he did let me down a little bit. But I stand by the reasoning for playing Desmond Reed. First off, nobody was playing Desmond Reed against Notre Dame because everybody just said, "Ooh, I ain't playing a guy against Notre Dame," and failed to realize that Desmond Reed was like a 9K player with potential to score like 30 DraftKings points and break the slate. So, like, you had a really good path to upside with Desmond Reed where nobody was playing him. And I kind of feel a similar way about Bryson Washington this week. This is a guy that routinely put up games of north of 30 DraftKings points last year, had one of over 50. Hasn't been able to find the same traction this year. It's been because he's been really banged up. And, you know, what if he's healthy? What if he breaks off a long touchdown run? Last week he had a 40-yarder. Like, what if he just has one of those games, right? And no one's going to play him. No one's going to be on him. So if you're playing GPPs, I understand putting him as a part of your player pool. I don't know how I'm going to attack it just yet, but I understand the logic in wanting to play him because I think it makes a lot of sense to play a guy like Bryson Washington at that price tag at very low ownership. I don't know if he's for me or not, but I'm just saying there's an argument to be made. Now, the wide receiver position, I think Josh Cameron's too cheap for Baylor. This is a guy that just went up against the Utah defense, had 13 for 165 and 2 touchdowns. This guy is going to play on Sundays. He's a really good receiver. He had been quite quiet since the SMU game, but he explodes for big games every now and then. And that Utah game was one. That SMU game was one. I think with this game environment being one of the highest totals on the slate, he's certainly worth a look for your player pool for GPPs. I am not as big of a fan of playing Michael Trigg, and it's not because he's a tight end. Like, look, I played tight end in high school. I love tight ends. But he just doesn't seem to ever have the huge games like Josh Cameron does. So I'd rather play a guy like Josh Cameron who can explode for a big outcome, because I primarily play GPPs, than a guy like Trigg where you're getting a higher floor, lower ceiling. Hawkins and Wilson are going to be a part of this passing offense also. Hawkins somehow has not scored a touchdown yet this year on 49 catches. I kind of feel like he's due for one. Cole Wilson is their deep threat. He's going to get deep targets. He's scored a deep touchdown in each of the last 2 games. Don't mind the idea of that at $4,100, because one catch could pay off his price tag. Now, on the Arizona side, I think this season you have to have interest in anybody that's going up against Baylor. Their defense is just that bad. They're ranked 127th nationally in rushing yards allowed. They're also outside the top 100 in passing yards allowed. Noah Fifita, I played him against Cincinnati. He was a little bit of a dud, but it was only because he only accounted for 1 touchdown. You know, I believe they had either a defensive or a special teams touchdown. They had multiple running backs score. You know, if he just had 3 touchdowns, we feel a lot differently about that game. He almost threw for 300 yards. And Baylor's defense is a lot worse than Cincinnati's. I don't mind Noah Fifita here at $6,400. And when everybody is going to flock to Kyron Drones, that makes the other cheap quarterbacks lesser owned. It also makes playing Drones and Fifita a really low owned combination. So I don't mind the idea of going down to Fifita with low ownership with this matchup against Baylor. Now, Arizona, we've talked about it for weeks now. They're a massive running back committee, which is super annoying. Riscano and Mahdi split carries, and then every now and then they'll be like, hey, well, let's give Quincy Craig a little run. Last week they gave him 11 carries. So Baylor's run defense is so bad that all 3 of these running backs could score. Like, Baylor just, they don't tackle, they don't defend inside zone well at all, and that's kind of what Arizona likes to run. So I could see one of these running backs having a lot of success. I really could. But the problem is like, how do you pick between them? I don't know. Like, they're so evenly distributed right now. I don't know how you pick between which of the 3 of them. And so it begs the question, like, if you have a 3-headed monster like this and you want to make sure that you don't miss the right combination, are you really trying to get all 3 of them into the same builds? And I don't know. I just don't like the idea of a 3-headed monster, even though I certainly see the path to upside for all of them. At the wide receiver position for Arizona, they've got Chris Hudson as their wide receiver 1. I like the guy. I've been playing him a lot. Paid me off against Cincinnati, 8 for 123 in that game. This team had a massive target void when Ted McMillan went to the NFL draft and got drafted by my Carolina Panthers. And Chris Hudson's doing his best to fill that void. Point blank. I think that's the guy you want in this offense. We've mentioned before Trey Spivey. He's kind of sneaky. He's not a full-time receiver anymore now that Hunter is back, but I think he's a little sneaky. And then Gio Richardson also is a guy that comes in and plays a decent bit situationally. If you're looking to punt receiver this week, $3,000 Gio Richardson would probably be one of my favorite punts on this slate. All right, now let's talk UConn and FAU. So this is the game of the day in terms of DFS, not in terms of real life football, but in terms of DFS, this is the game of the day. UConn is 7.5-point favorites, game total of 64.5 points. That's the highest on the slate, meaning the implied total is about 36-28 in favor of UConn. Big reason why this game total is so high is because you have 2 good offenses, 2 bad defenses, and a team in FAU that plays at a lightning fast pace and likes to throw it all over the yard. That creates a lot of plays, which creates a lot of points. Joey Fagnano is the quarterback for UConn, who had by far his worst game of the season last week against Air Force. I don't like the price tag on Fagnano. He doesn't give you a ton of rushing upside. He doesn't often, well, I guess I can't really say that. Like, he had a 5-game stretch where 3 touchdowns or more in all 5 of those games. So he does have multiple touchdown upside. I don't know. I don't generally get behind playing pocket passers at $8,500. So it brings the option to play where you can play a full-on UConn stack, or you could do what I've talked about all season long, where sometimes a pocket passer is the least important part of the stack because he's always sharing points with someone else. So you could play these UConn skill guys with or without Fagnano, and I could see a case for either way. He's going to make my player pool, but I don't know if he's going to be like a core player or anything because I just don't like that price tag for a pocket passer. Now, I really do like Cam Edwards. FAU's run defense is really bad. They're 130th in rushing yards allowed, and Cam Edwards is the workhorse running back. You know, he's had 15 or more carries in each of the last 4 games, scored a rushing touchdown in each of the last 4 games. He's the guy. He's $6,900. There's a lot of running back by committee on this slate. and there's a lot of cheap options at quarterback and wide receiver on this slate, so it's really easy to put him in there at $6,900. I also feel the same way about their wide receiver one, Skylar Bell. He leads the slate in overall targets with 127 through 11 games. Yes, you heard me correctly. That's over 11 targets a game. The last time we saw him on the slate, he was massive chalk against Duke, but he was chalk that you had to play. He was $6,900. He put up 31.7 DraftKings points. Y'all, I hate to say it, but like in college football DFS, there's a lot of discussion on, oh, you can't play chalk. Oh, you got to play all these guys that are low owned. You can't just play everybody that everybody else plays. I hate to break it to you, but like sometimes in college football DFS, the best plays are just so obvious that like you kind of got to play him no matter what the ownership is. Skylar Bell, when he went up against Duke, was one of those plays, and it was because of his insane target share and a really good matchup. And guess what? In this game, he has an insane target share and a really good matchup again, and he's only $7,400. The question in college football DFS doesn't become should you avoid chalk or should you play chalk? It should be what is good chalk versus what is bad chalk. And to me, Skylar Bell this week, much like Jordan Marshall last week, much like Skylar Bell 2 weeks ago, feels like good chalk at $7,400. So I'm going to be playing him in a ton of my lineups, and I'm really not interested in any of the other UConn wide receivers. On the FAU side, they've kind of got like UConn light in terms of their offense. And what I mean by that is they've got a pocket passing quarterback in Caden Veltkamp, who is, he's okay, but like he's not putting up these like super wow DraftKings point totals because, again, he's a pocket passer. He has no rushing upside, and he turns the ball over a lot. But at $8,000, I think you can play him in a game stack. That's going to be my argument is like if you want to play Fagnano and Veltkamp, play him as a part of a game stack. The running back position for FAU, I do have very minimal interest in because FAU ranks third nationally in pass rate, and their starting running back, Xavier Terrell, is listed as questionable for this game. The backup, Jamari Sands, has been starting, but he hasn't delivered a single DraftKings performance over 14 DraftKings points since he's been the starter. So it's hard to get real excited about that. What I am excited about, though, is the top two receivers for this FAU team. Easton Messer ranks second overall on the slate in targets with 110. No other wide receiver has cleared 100, by the way. PPR scoring on DraftKings, this guy's a machine. Just because he catches so many passes, because the team passes the ball so much. Each of the last 2 games, he has been over 30 DraftKings points. I'm here for Easton Messer at $7K. If you ask me to pick between the two of them, I'm probably going Bell over Messer, but I see the vision with both of them. And then I'm not going to discount Andre Wasim, or Asad Wasim. Why did I think his name was Andre? Asad Wasim. He is the number 2 wide receiver for this FAU team. He had 15 targets last week, caught 11 of them against Tulsa. $5,800. Again, I think he's great as a game stack. If you're looking to do a Veltkamp double stack, I could absolutely see it. If you're looking to pivot off of Messer, who could end up being highly owned, I kind of get the vision there at $5,800 as well. All right, that is the second slate of 3 games. Let's take a quick breather, and then we're going to get on with the rest of them. While you're here, make sure while you're watching or listening to this, you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That way you can be with us for the rest of the college football season, as well as all of our college basketball content. You'll also know when we go live for all our future live shows if you are subscribed. If this video is helping you out in any way, please hit the like button. If you're watching on YouTube, it helps me out a ton when you guys do that. I cannot stress it enough, and I really do appreciate it. It helps the channel grow so much when you guys do that, and this is a big time of year for me with college football kind of reaching its apex and college basketball starting as well. Feast week is coming up next week, so it's going to be a big time of the year for both sports. Now, game number 7 is my beloved Texas Longhorns, and Arkansas is coming to play them. Texas is 8.5-point favorites, with a game total of 58.5, meaning the implied total is about 33-25 in favor of Texas. So let's talk about Arkansas. Taylon Green, I have accused him in the past of being a G5 merchant and a guy who excels at playing against bad defenses. And there's merit to that. But Texas' defense has given up some pretty big performances to now Gunnar Stockton and DJ Lagway and Blake Shapen. And so Taylon Green, dual threat elite athlete, $7,500. I'm not going to fault you for playing him. I do still think he's kind of a G5 merchant, but I'm not going to fault you for playing him. I will not play an Arkansas running back. And if you're stacking up Taylon Green, Omega Blake is the wide receiver one. He's really cooled off in recent weeks. Raylan Sharp has really been the guy in recent weeks, leading them in catches and yards each of the last 2 games. They're also getting him the ball on the ground with some design touches. Raylan Sharp, $4,100 would be the receiver that I would be playing, even though, like I said, Omega Blake, still their wide receiver one on the season. Now, for Texas, Arch Manning has kind of been a bad defense merchant himself. And Arkansas is a very bad defense. They're ranked 120th in rushing yards allowed, 105th in passing yards allowed. And you look at what Arch has done, his big games, 35 against San Jose State, 40 against Sam Houston, 34 against Mississippi State, 28 against Vanderbilt. He has massive games against bad defenses. And so on a slate where, yeah, he's up there at $9,000, no one's going to play him. But it would be really easy to play a Drones and Arch lineup because of how much salary you're saving with Drones. So I think that any week, I think Arch is a really good GPP play this week. Now, you can call me a biased Texas fan all you want. I'll gladly accept those allegations. I love my Longhorns. But I really do think this week, Arch is a really good GPP play because in his career, Arch against bad defenses generally puts up 30 DraftKings points. And so I'm cool with that here this week. Now, the running back position. We've already mentioned Arkansas is a really bad run defense. Last week, there was a big discussion in the Discord about the LSU running back situation with Harlem Berry and Caden Durham, right? And how LSU's offensive line is really bad. And you know, they can't run the ball. You can never play an LSU running back. You know, that was the argument. Basically, if you've ever watched Maction, you kind of know that when a bad unit in college football takes on another bad unit in college football, you never know which one's going to win. So, like, when a bad offense goes up against a bad defense, sometimes the bad offense wins. Sometimes the bad defense wins. You don't really know what to expect. And last week for LSU, the 2 running backs totaled 115 yards and a touchdown. And Harlem Berry also went down when he could have scored another touchdown at the very end of the game. And so Harlem Berry, is as much as, you know, it looked like a very mediocre play at the end, if he had a bigger carry share, or if he didn't get the first touchdown vultured, or if he had scored the second touchdown, it would have been a really good play. I say all that to say Texas this week, we've got Quintravion Wisner and we've got CJ Baxter. And Wisner has been getting more of a workload. This is a team that has really struggled to run the football. The offensive line has not been good the second half of the season. This could be a spot where they could be able to run the football against Arkansas. It's the same concept we talked about last week with Harlem Berry, where like this run defense is so bad, there's a chance that it could really, really work. And I'm willing to put Wisner in my player pool for that reason. At the wide receiver position, here's where we got a lot to talk about. Ryan Wingo is listed as probable for this game. He has been by far the most targeted receiver for this Texas team, even though he has a bad case of the drops. If he caught every football that went his way this season, his stats would be insane. He's such a great athlete. He's going to play in the NFL. I enjoy watching him play, but he's dropped too many passes this season, objectively. And I try to not get on here and bash college kids because I don't really like doing that. But Wingo, I like the kid. I like watching him play. He's electric with the ball in his hands. He's got to catch more footballs. $6,600. He's probable. I think he's quite interesting if he plays because, again, this Arkansas defense is really, really bad. Emmett Mosley has been pretty good since he's been suiting up for Texas. Last 3 games, 21, 19, and 9, and the 9 was against Georgia. I'll forgive that a little bit. $4,400. I think Wingo and Mosley, really sensible stacking partners for Arch Manning if you choose to go that route. Now, Kentucky and Vanderbilt is the next game up. Vanderbilt's 8.5-point favorites, game total of 54.5, meaning the implied total is about 31-23 in favor of the Commodores. Now, on the Kentucky side, Vanderbilt's been pretty bad defensively lately. They gave up 28 DraftKings points to Arch, we just mentioned, and Ashton Daniels was the number 2 quarterback on the slate 2 weeks ago against them. So this is not a good defense right now. Cutter Boley has shown a little bit of upside. 21 DraftKings points against Tennessee Tech. Yeah, that's an FCS opponent. Don't really read too much into that. But he had 38 against Tennessee, 19.8 against Texas. Like, I don't know, man. I think there's a chance Cutter Boley could have a big game, and nobody's going to play him because he's $200 more than Kyron Drones, and everybody who's looking to play a super cheap quarterback is going to play Kyron Drones. So you could get really different by playing Cutter Boley here this week. And like I said, I kind of see it. I haven't made my lineups yet. I haven't really whittled down my player pool yet, but Cutter Boley potentially in there for me. At the running back position, I do like Seth McGowan for Kentucky. He's just one of these guys that you just play him every week. And you look at what he's done this season. He has 5 games over 20 DraftKings points and 4 games that were not. And so, yeah, that's pretty good odds, right? $5,800 workhorse running back. I like him. I'm here for it. The wide receiver position. 2 weeks ago, I tried to get really cute and play DJ Miller for them, and he caught 2 passes against Florida. He's not a total nothing. I kind of thought he was going to turn into something for them. I liked what I saw in some underlying usage stuff. But Kendrick Law is the guy that is the wide receiver 1 for this team. 11, 6, and 6 catches over the last 3 weeks. Don't overthink it. This is the wide receiver 1. If you're playing Cutter Boley, play Kendrick Law. Vanderbilt ranks 116th in passing yards allowed. I think that's a very sensible stacking partner or one-off play in Kendrick Law. Now, on the other side of this game, we've got Vanderbilt. And anytime you got Vanderbilt on the slate, you got to talk about Diego Pavia because he's that dude. And he is priced up very high this week, $9,200. But he's kind of worth it. He has 3 games this season over 40 DraftKings points. No other quarterback on this slate can boast that. He is being used as the primary runner for this team and the primary thrower for this team. He's thrown for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in back-to-back games. He's ran for a touchdown in 4 straight games. I could go on and on. I think this is a pretty good spot for Pavia with Vandy implied to score 31 points. That means they're going to score 4 touchdowns. You can expect Pavia to account for 3 or 4 of them. $9,200, very reasonable price tag. I'm not interested in the Vanderbilt running back room with Cedric Alexander. If I'm playing Pavia stacked, it's with Eli Stowers, who is just a complete mismatch on all over the field. And they've really exploited it over the last 2 weeks, 27 and 36 DraftKings points. He's only $5,200. That makes a Pavia Stowers stack very reasonably priced, especially considering you've got the option to game stack it up with Cutter Boley as a cheap quarterback on the other side, or to play Kyron Drones to save some salary as your second quarterback. Next up, we've got Duke taking on North Carolina. Duke is 6.5-point favorites with a game total of 51.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 29-22 in favor of the Blue Devils. North Carolina's defense under Steve Belichick, who is quite considerably older than his dad's girlfriend. That's weird. UNC, that defense, they're ranked 22nd nationally in rushing yards allowed and 80th nationally in passing yards allowed. They are a pass funnel. So that means for Duke, Darian Mensah is going to have to show up and be that dude. His price has been absolutely all over the place this season. He was $6,400 when he put up 34 DraftKings points against Clemson. He rose to $9,500 for the UConn game and has not topped 20 DraftKings points since. Now he's back to $6,300. It's a reasonable price tag to me for a guy that has 300-yard upside, for a guy that has multiple touchdown upside, and is got a 29-point implied total. Like I said, this is a slate where you've got a ton of options at the quarterback position, and he's one of them. I'm not interested in Nate Shepherd. I've had my fun with him. I've played him. I've made some money with him. I'm out this week. North Carolina is a defense that does not give up a lot against the run. At the wide receiver position, Cooper Barkate is the wide receiver 1. Over the course of the season, he leads in targets, catches, but he is kind of slipping over the last 2 games. Keyshawn Brown is a guy that has had 8 catches over these last 2 games. Has not found the end zone. He also did find the end zone twice against Clemson. He's kind of closing in on Barkate for total targets. I don't mind the idea there. Andrell Anthony and Samir Higgins are like touchdown vultures at the wide receiver position. Like all they do is score touchdowns. If Anthony is out, I think that's going to funnel more volume to Barkate and Brown, which makes them both very playable as stacking partners with Darian Mensah. Now, on the North Carolina side, they're really testing me here, y'all, because I've pretty much gone on record for saying just play whatever quarterback and wide receivers play in Duke because their secondary is really bad. And last week, I made a ton of money with Trell Harris at wide receiver. Was a great play. Gio Lopez. Oh, boy. Can we play Gio Lopez at $5,500? Can we? He's had 2 games this season over 19. They were against FCS Richmond and Syracuse. Both really bad defenses. Man, I just don't know if I can get there. But if you remember him at South Alabama last year, this was a guy who could really sling it, like throw it all over the yard. He had rushing upside. North Carolina's just really neutered his play style because North Carolina, they do not run an innovative or creative offense. They have basically no offensive line. They've really neutered what I thought was a fun G5 quarterback in Gio Lopez. I want to play him, but I don't know if I'm going to get there. At the running back position, it's a three-headed monster. You got June and Hall and Gauze, and maybe even Caleb Hood sometimes. I'm not interested in investing in that. One of them could have a big day, but I think Duke is a bit of a pass funnel, and that's a split. Jordan Shipp has been pretty good lately for North Carolina's passing offense. He's caught at least 4 passes in every game since the calendar turned to October. I think he's just a super consistent, steady wide receiver with a great matchup against Duke. But don't count out Kobe Paysour either. 8 targets last week against Wake Forest, caught 5 of them for 40 yards. I think that both of those wide receivers going up against Duke are in play for me, even if you don't want to stack them with Gio Lopez. Next game up is the game of the day in college football. USC taking on Oregon. And y'all, I'm going to tell you right now, this is my upset special of the week. I think USC wins this game outright. I think Oregon is a little bit suspect in terms of their overall health. And when you look at the teams they've played, the teams they've beaten, I don't think their record is as good as they're perceived to be. Oregon is 9.5-point favorites in this game. Game total of 59.5, meaning the implied total is about 34-25 in favor of Ducks. On the USC side, I've played a lot of Jaden Malva this season, and never has he been at $7,000. That Oregon defense is pretty good, though, y'all. So I don't think I'm going to get there for $7,000 Jaden Malva this week. Just like at the running back position, I don't really have any interest in King Miller or Waymon Jordan if he's active, or Brian Jackson. Like, this is a good Oregon run defense, and these guys are expensive, and they're probably going to split carries. Mekhi Lemon, got to have interest in him anytime he's on the slate, though. Like, he's shown us that he's pretty much matchup proof. In my personal opinion, I would rank him as the second best wide receiver on the slate behind Skylar Bell. Jacoby Lane would be the guy if you want to pivot off of Mekhi Lemon, but like, he's up to 6,200 now. The purpose of playing him was back when he was like 4K and Lemon was 7K, and you get a lot of salary savings. I'm kind of not in favor of that pivot when he's still quite expensive. If you think that, Dan Lanning's going to scheme something up to stop those 2 wide receivers, Tanoh Hines has been playing quite a bit of snaps, even though the production hasn't really been there. For Oregon, they're in kind of a similar boat, right? Where I don't really want to pay $7,700 for Dante Moore. Just don't. Like, he doesn't hit for that salary against good defenses. At the running back position, it's a massive split. It's going to be Whittington and Davidson and De'Aaron Hill, and which one of them's going to score, which one of them's, I just don't know. I don't want to try to prognosticate that, so I'm just out on it. At wide receiver for Oregon, Corey Moore is questionable. If he's out, Kenyon Sadiq is interesting. Last week, he had 8 for 96 and a touchdown against Minnesota. He's in a mismatch at the tight end position. I have interest there if Moore is out. McClellan and Benson have been full-time receivers since Moore has been out, but like, you don't have to do that. I think there's better options on the slate. I think some of them are in this next game. TCU taking on Houston. Houston is 1.5-point favorites with a game total of 54.5 points, meaning the implied total is about 28-27 in favor of Houston. So for this game, I kind of think TCU has a super wide range of outcomes. Like, there's rumors that Sonny Dykes is on the hot seat. They've kind of underachieved this year considering how good Josh Hoover is perceived to be. Josh Hoover, in his own right, has struggled, has not been over 19 DraftKings points in each of the last 3 games. But Hoover is a guy who has 300-yard passing upside. He is a guy that has clear stacking partners. And with this team having their starting running back Kavorian Barnes out for the game, Hoover's going to get a ton of passing volume. So I'm kind of here for Hoover at $6,700. Not interested in the running back room. It's going to be a committee. At the wide receiver position, Eric McAllister is a guy that's got to make your player pool just because he's one of those guys. He kind of reminds me like the TCU version of Josh Cameron. Like, he has slate breaking upside. He has these massive games, and if he puts one of them up, you're going to need him. Jordan Dwyer's the wide receiver too, but like, let me think the best way to phrase this. The price difference is not indicative of the production difference between McAllister and Dwyer. Dwyer should be like 5,200, but he's 63. It's kind of the same way with Lemon and Lane, if I'm being honest. Manjack is here. The no accessories, no gloves wearing psychopath. He's only $4,400, but you don't have to go there unless you're really looking to double stack Hoover or something like that. Now, on the Houston side, I like Connor Wigman. I played him a lot this season. He's got a lot of rushing upside. TCU's run defense is actually quite stout, so Wigman's going to have to beat them like with his arm and his legs. He's had a wide range of outcomes this season, though, man. Like, you just look at his rushing. He went from 111 to negative 27 over the span of a game. Passing, he went from 306 to 71 over the span of a game. Like, there's just a wide range of outcomes with this guy, but he's $8,600. I don't think he's going to be highly owned, and his rushing upside gives him a really good shot to put up like 25 plus fantasy points in this game. The running back position, they've got Mean Dean Connors at $6,700. I think TCU is a decent run defense, actually, so I'm passing. A wide receiver, the good news is with Houston, if you want to stack up a Wigman, it's two options. They only throw to Amari Thomas and Tanner Koziel. Koziel's the tight end. He's been the consistent, locked-in number one option, high volume over the course of the season. Doesn't really generate a whole lot of explosive plays or touchdowns. Amari Thomas sees fewer targets, but does generate the explosive plays and the touchdowns. For the last 5 games, Thomas has been over 22 DraftKings points. That's pretty good, even for a guy at $6,100. So I think there's very clear stacking partner there. If you're looking for upside, it's got to be Amari Thomas. Now, last game of the day, Kansas State taking on Utah. Utah's 17.5 point favorites with a game total of 51.5. That means the implied total is about 34-17 in favor of Utah. Now, let's talk about the Kansas State side. So this is not a good matchup going up against this Utah defense at Utah. But Avery Johnson, we've mentioned him in the past. Like, he's like Justin Fields. He's very mobile. He puts up a lot of fantasy points, but you don't always leave the game saying, wow, that guy's good at football. But this is a tough matchup. I don't know if he's going to be able to hit that rushing upside against this Utah defense. Could he get there in garbage time? Maybe. I don't know. I kind of put him in the Taylon Green category where, like, anybody with the rushing upside of this magnitude at $6,800, he should get consideration. What I'm going to end up doing with him, I haven't made my mind up yet. At running back, we've got Joe Jackson for Kansas State. Dylan Edwards is apparently healthy, but apparently that's new. He has entered the transfer portal, so he's gone. So Joe Jackson is the number one running back now. I knew Edwards was healthy. I didn't realize he was just completely gone from the program, though. Jackson's been up and down since he's been a starter. Hasn't had a game this season over 17 DraftKings points. I don't think it happens against Utah. I'm passing. At the wide receiver position, here's where it gets interesting for Kansas State. So Jace Brown, their bona fide wide receiver 1, explosive playmaker. I played him a ton this year. He's out for the season now. Jerron Tibbs has kind of been the second wide receiver lurking the entire season. Does he get a huge boost now that Brown is out? It's certainly a possibility. Could you see more targets go to Adonis Moisey? Could you see more targets go to Garrett Oakley, the tight end? Yes, I think there's a possibility there. One thing you will need to monitor, though, is Jaron Bradley is questionable for this game. Bradley hasn't played a whole lot this year, but if he were to play, he could step into that wide receiver 1 role as well. Now, last team to talk about is the Utah Utes. So news coming out of Utah is that Devin Dampier is going to be active for this game. And that's interesting because I do not trust Kyle Whittingham and his injury reports and his honesty with his players' availability. I do not trust it at all. But Dampier is $7,300. It's kind of interesting. But there's no guarantee that they won't just come out and it'll be Bird Ficklin. Bird Ficklin is electric. He's a runner more than a thrower. He played for a good bit of that game against Baylor, put up 32 DraftKings points. Started the game against Colorado, put up 37. I don't trust this. If I knew Bird Ficklin was going to be the starter, Bird Ficklin might be a core play, but I don't trust Kyle Whittingham at all in this regard. At the running back position, Wayshawn Parker's been great for them. last 3 games, 23, 19, 29. I don't mind going back there. I think he's a pretty solid play. At the wide receiver position, Ryan Davis is the wide receiver 1. He's been up and down, though. I definitely think he's in better shape if Dampier plays. Dallin Bentley, the tight end, same deal. He's kind of been up and down, but with less upside than Ryan Davis. I'd certainly rather pay the $900 to get to Ryan Davis, but with the uncertainty behind the quarterback position, it's really hard to feel confident about any of those Utah guys. All right, we're going to take a quick breather, and then we're going to do like a quick run through of kind of some of the stuff that we would have talked about on the live show tonight if we had it. All right, so if you're watching on YouTube, what you are looking at is the sheet for this Saturday. This is something that my co-host, Zach Green, aka Big Country DFS, he puts these sheets together every single Saturday, and it is not a player pool. Obviously, you see most of the players on the slate listed here. This is a way of organizing thoughts, especially if you are somebody who is playing multiple lineups, and it has guys kind of sorted by their safety or their projection or even their ownership. Because generally speaking, the guys we have listed in green on here are the guys that are going to be highly owned coming into Saturday. So that's kind of just a way where you can organize your thoughts in that way. If you want access to this sheet, you can get in multiple places. You can go check out Zach's Twitter at Big Country DFS. You can go check out the Fantasy Corner Discord, which we've already mentioned, because it's in there as well. Now, let's talk game stacks real quick. So generally speaking, I think that there are 2 games on this slate that are worthy of building full-on game stacks for, and that is the Arizona game taking on Baylor and the UConn game taking on FAU. I think that those 2 games, me and Zach are in alignment on this. Those are the 2 games that you are going to want to build full-on game stack lineups if you're playing GPPs. My other strategy this week is going to be to build semi game stack lineups. And what I mean by that is with Kyron Drones for Virginia Tech only being $4,800, what you're afforded the opportunity to do is you can pay up at a lot of other positions because of that. And so what you can do is you could build a semi game stack lineup where you take for instance, a Kyron Drones on Virginia Tech. And then let's just use the UConn game as an example here. I could use Caden Veltkamp as my second quarterback, stack him with Easton Messer, and then I could play Cam Edwards or Skylar Bell on UConn. And I've kind of got that game stack, but I've got Drones as my second quarterback, which allows me to afford it. You could do a similar concept with like the Texas-Arkansas game. You could go Drones, you could go Arch Manning and Emmett Mosley, and then you go like Raylan Sharp or something like that on the Arkansas side. There's just all kinds of options that are brought into play because of the fact that you can play Drones at $4,800. And what I think will be the important discernment there is if you're doing this semi-game stack strategy like I'm mentioning, is determining which stacks do you need the quarterback for, which stacks do you leave the quarterback out of, right? And I already kind of mentioned, I think that the UConn game in particular, Fagnano and Veltkamp, that is a game where you might not need the quarterbacks because they're such pocket passers. And if they don't get like 3 touchdowns and the 300-yard bonus, you're not going to need them in your lineup. And so you could get away with having 1 or 0 of those quarterbacks, but using their wide receivers. So that's something I think is worthy of looking into is this week is building those semi-game stacks. Now, another thing that we always do on the show is we always talk about Zach's core 4. Now, it's super important to note that this is a cash game core 4. In cash games, you're not worried about ownership. You're worried about safety. You're worried about guys who have pathways to just solid point totals, not guys that necessarily are going to be looking to break the slate every time, but guys who can just give you 3-4x value and go on about the rest of your day at an affordable price. And so Zach's core 4 this week, Quintravion Wisner, running back for Texas, Kyron Drones, quarterback, Virginia Tech, Easton Messer, wide receiver, FAU, and then Cam Edwards, running back, UConn. So much like myself, Zach, very clearly investing in the FAU-UConn game. Even if you are playing cash games, if you're not playing GPPs, there's a lot to like in that game because of the high total and because of the players that are in it. As I said during the show, I think I lean more Skylar Bell over Easton Messer, but I totally understand playing Messer just because of the insane volume that he is going to see as a part of that FAU passing attack. All right. But I believe that is going to about cover it, y'all. Yeah, I think that's going to kind of do it here for this slate. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about the stuff that we would if we did like the live show, but it's kind of hard when you don't have somebody going back and forth with you. I think that the kind of the monologue on the semi game stacks was pretty helpful. I do think that going over Zach's Cash Core 4 was something that I definitely wanted to do. I haven't published my core yet. It's going to be going live on the Patreon. I haven't written my weekly article for drroto.com yet. That's going to be going live tomorrow. I will say sneak peek, Skylar Bell is going to be on there. That's like the one guy I feel really, really good about heading into this week is Skylar Bell. That's my guy. That's my ride or die this week. Anyway, that is going to do it for this episode. If you like what you saw on YouTube, please hit the like button. If you're listening on audio, please rate and review. Those help me out so much, guys. I really do appreciate it when you guys do that. And then if you want to keep up with us for the rest of the college football season, head on over or hit that subscribe button. That way you can keep up with us. If you want to get in on the discussion with myself and a whole lot of other different individuals, head on over to the Fantasy Corner Discord. If you want the core plays, head on over to the Patreon. That's where you can get access to that. But yeah, hopefully we gave you guys all the information you need in order to build some winning DFS lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel for this Saturday slate. Yeah, this is like the second to last big Saturday slate we got, right? Because next week is rivalry weekend. It'll be a big one then, and then the regular season's done, and we'll have a few like bigger bowl slates. But bowl season's kind of a crapshoot. The CFP slate will be pretty good when we do get there. But yeah, so enjoy these big Saturday slates while we have them, y'all, because we don't have a whole lot of them left. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. Best of luck to you guys here on this Week 13 slate. Thank you guys for watching the list to this point, and I will see you guys next time.